You're listening to Ants Talk.
My next guest has produced a liquid soap that sells every 2.2 seconds around the world. He famously locked himself in a cage with industrial hemp plants in front of the White House in Washington. He has also led the fight for GMO labeling, and this is just some of the things he has done. Welcome to the show, David Bronner. Thanks for joining me today, David. How are you?
I'm great, and yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for coming on. So, David, tell us about your Dr. Bronner's Peppermint Pure Castle liquid soap. What led you to create it?
Well, actually, it was my grandfather, Dr. Bronner, who himself was a third-generation master soap maker. He grew up in Germany, in a southern German town called Heilbronn. His grandfather started manufacturing soap in 1858 in another small German town, Laupheim, Orthodox Jewish family. By the time my granddad was coming of age, his dad and two uncles had basically built a big factory in Heilbronn, and we were producing most of the liquid soaps in public washrooms in Germany and in the Zeppelins and everything. He came over in 29, but more out of generational conflicts with his dad than the eventual dimensions of Hitler and fascism. So it's a long story there, but increasingly desperate to get his family out, and his two sisters got out, but his parents stayed till it was too late, and the factory was Aryanized, and they were deported and killed. So in response to this, he felt that in the next Holocaust in a nuclear-armed world, if we didn't realize our transcendent unity across religious and ethnic divides, we would all perish. Going around the country lecturing and selling his natural family soap recipe on the side, which in his favorite scent was peppermint. In the post-World War II era, like natural soaps were kind of out of fashion. It was better living through chemistry was the mantra, and kind of fancy petrochemical based surfactants and moisturizers and personal care and synthetic fertilizers and agriculture and plastic and all that.
Yeah.
But he stayed true to the kind of natural biodegradable soaps, and they really resonated with the rise of the counterculture when a whole generation kind of dropped out, in protest against the kind of rampant exploitation of the earth and this war machine that wouldn't stop. And, here's my granddad's soap with, biodegradable, versatile soap. You could wash your hair, dog dishes by the side of the river and not worry about it. And a really sweet message of peace and love. So that's kind of like when the soap really caught fire. It was in the 60s and 70s. And then, just kind of became a mainstay of the counterculture. And then with the, as sustainability and wellness went mainstream, that's that's when our soap really started to cross over.
It is amazing because, so much of that resonates even today. So much of what you've just said.
Yeah, that's it. Obviously we're facing the climate change cliff, and people are really waking up that we need to figure out how do we produce our food and clothes and soaps and everything else in a way that's in harmony with the earth and doesn't create a disaster, doesn't go to hell and back.
Yeah.
Which all too often, so many of our products are just really feeding a machine that's just destroying the earth. So,
I work as a makeup artist, and I actually am working for a brand here in Australia who have just taken a chemical out of their sunscreen because they realized it was actually killing coral. So it's great that they've taken it out of the product, but who would have even thought that was even a reality that we were sort of dealing with? That just spins my mind.
Yeah, that's just it. I think that's what's really driving natural personal care. The recognition that just having so many different chemicals in our cosmetics and our food and our water, the air we breathe. This is just not healthy and not good for us, not good for the earth. So I think simplifying formulas, going more natural. That's such a huge trend and
Definitely.
so important.
Yeah. Now, you are also a fierce campaigner for cannabis and psychedelics for patients and responsible adults. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so my path is a little complex, but uh, I was in college. So my dad, I grew up working with my dad, who oversaw the soap production for my granddad, but had his own business. I grew up in, among other things, he developed firefighting foam and made a version for sort of like in a low visibility forest fire. When you drop foam, you can actually see where you drop the water, and there's a lot of other advantages to foam and for fighting fires, but it looks like a blizzard hit the forest.
Mm.
So my dad developed a version for Hollywood that as a fake snow. So me and my brother grew up going to commercial movie sets, blasting foam on trees to make it look like it snowed in 100-degree LA summertime.
How fun.
Uh, yeah, it was super rad. And, my dad kind of rebelled against my granddad. My dad kind of felt, a little bit that my granddad bailed as a father to go off to save the world. And, my dad's mom died when he was really young. And so he kind of came up in a series of foster homes. And so he was all about like, taking care of your family and your community and showing up like kind of for projects right in front of you that are like more practical rather than the more cosmic vision of my granddad. So, me and my brother came up under that. Yeah, it wasn't really until college, and I didn't really understand what my granddad was all talking about. So, me and my brother grew up with my dad, and he was just amazing, just an incredible example of more practical projects, showing up for your family, showing up for your community. So anyways, it wasn't until college, and, I went to Harvard. I was a biology major, and I'd rejected, I was, even though my dad was half Jewish, he was pretty religious, and my mom's Protestant. So I grew up Protestant, but I had rejected my faith by the time I was 13. I was more or less agnostic. And then I was in college, and I remember I was kind of increasingly dissatisfied with kind of scientific reductionism that says, human consciousness is just, it's just a natural adaptation to survive. Everything's all just physical process. And, on one level, sure, that of course, but, it was just really not that satisfying. It was just pretty incomplete. And I remember, and I was also like, I played football and then rugby, and I was partying a lot and going out drinking. But I started to like just realize like, hey, just hanging out with my friends in my room, listening to music and smoking some cannabis and just going deep with each other. And it was just such a higher vibration than alcohol, which, has its place, but, just really appreciated, like kind of on the Bob Marley level, just it really helps kind of elevate our vibration out of whatever dumb moods we're in, and not relating to each other and the kind of magical creatures and magical world we live in, but kind of, just being in a like whatever mood, and then like actually celebrating life and celebrating each other, and just really entering that more higher vibration. So really was appreciating cannabis in college, and then mushrooms. So it was maybe my junior year in college. I remember I took my first kind of mushroom chocolate, and I remember looking down at my arm and thinking, wow, at a quantum level, like I'm one with the world. There's not a difference from like my arm to the rest of the world at the deepest energetic level. I was just, high on mushrooms, just kind of thinking about the most basic, simple things. Yeah. So, I was just kind of realizing, when we eat and we poo, and just at the most basic level, that the energy of the world is pouring through me. And I'm like one with it. And I'm not even like the same stuff month to month. I'm just, my blood, like all of it's like different. And, I'm just like kind of this energy river with the world. And there's like this larger self that I'm part of, and and we're all here not that long, and just like feeling this larger identity and oneness with this kind of living reality that we're in. And it's not like this kind of dead world out there, but it's kind of, we're all together as one. And that was really one of my first important kind of unity experiences, on, that were helped by, psychedelic medicine.
Mm.
And it still didn't register too deeply at that point. And it really wasn't until Amsterdam, after college. I had a Euro pass, and, this is 1995, and, Amsterdam was the Mecca. It was kind of the land of the free for real. As far as cannabis, of course, but just generally a very open and tolerant society. And when I got to Amsterdam, I intersected the cannabis cup, the eighth cannabis cup, and got exposed to hemp, to hemp fiber, to hemp clothes, and just the like incredible potential of this crop, whose history had been more or less buried. And met just amazing activists who were just beautiful people, and they're facing like 10 years to life if they step foot back in the U.S. And a couple of them had formed a church in Arkansas in 1993 called Our Church, and they used cannabis as a sacrament to help elevate into the higher vibration and make a religious First Amendment challenge to the U.S. Constitution. And they got busted up by the feds, and a lot of them were locked up in jail, and a couple of them were in my squat in Amsterdam. And I was just going through a lot of awakening myself, and really woke up like, wow, man, what's wrong with my country that these awesome people would go to jail for their whole lives? And and by any rational measure of anything, alcohol is so much worse. And cannabis is not only like, not, and it's not just about partying, it's actually about being in, helping us be better people. And realizing that the war on drugs is in large part a war on cannabis and the war on the sacrament of my people, and really starting to activate like that the prohibition of cannabis was a proxy to go after the hippies and the counterculture, and before that a proxy to go after Mexican and African Americans back in the 30s when it was originally banned. And just the kind of racist, like just fascist policy of the prohibition of cannabis and psychedelics, of and none of which have any abuse potential, or you can't possibly overdose. And just waking up to that and just wondering like, well, what else is wrong with what I've been taught, and just kind of in a really wide open state there. And and actually in this time too had some more very important psychedelic experiences that really blew my heart and mind wide open, and really understood at a deepest possible level the light and love that my granddad was talking about. And getting there was very difficult. Had to go through a lot, basically, dying to myself. I didn't even want to be. I was actually in like a gay trans club, and it was like, man, I don't even want to be this homophobic, sexist idiot. Dude, that guy sucks. And just basically dying and being embraced in the light and love, and just like, wow, like immediately understanding what my granddad was talking about, and like, yes, this is what all the faith traditions, all the religions of the world at their heart are pointing at. But unfortunately, they take, when they take themselves too seriously and they make fundamentalist idols out of their beliefs, that's when it goes sideways, and that's all too often. But at their core, this is the mystical core, and just really realizing, wow, my granddad's right. In the midst of suffering and absurdity, this is the deepest ground of our being, and this is what his mission in life was. And then, whoa, how beautiful! And just really appreciating that. And in this time, like these same squat mates were vegetarian, and I was in this wide open state, and they're like, hey, why are you eating meat? And, it's like, oh yeah, why am I doing that? And went and smoked a bowl and realized I have a knife when I'm in the store, and I can shut down and kill that cow, or I could just let the cow go do its thing. Like, just I could be in a relationship like I am with my dog, and just because I choose not to be doesn't mean like it's not a really amazing creature that can just be itself, and I can go eat some vegetables.
It's funny. It's funny you actually say that, because I've got a Saint Bernard, and it's the first dog that I've actually ever owned. And I mean, I was almost born a vegetarian. I didn't actually like meat. I didn't like the taste of it, didn't like the texture from when I was born. And I was sort of forced to eat meat because it was just the thing to do. And then when I got my dog, it's been about 7 years now, I turned vegetarian again because I thought, how can I love this creature so much and not give the same respect to every other creature? And that's when I decided I don't need to eat meat anymore.
That's beautiful, man. And that's exactly was my kind of exact trajectory. And that, that we can be in that relationship. We just choose not to be. And we just choose to shut down and be unconscious. And, and fast forward to today, I mean, I do appreciate people who can be disciplined and only choose to eat animal products from a high level pasture based operation where the chickens and the cows, where they get to roam free on pasture and can live their lives and aren't in little cages. But 99% of the time it's a disaster. It's such an inhumane horror show. And it's so ecologically destructive. And anyways, I mean, even that, I mean, I appreciate it. It's not I still think, the vegan vegetarian path is preferable, but the reality is that 99% of what's happening with livestock is so atrocious and horrible. So that, just people need to, I would say either go vegan or vegetarian, or just, if you're going to choose to eat meat, dairy, and eggs, just be really careful and make sure you know the farm, know how they're treating their animals.
Yeah.
It's like, it's your choice. It's your knife.
This is Ants Talk.
I actually find it funny that most of those meat eaters will often go off at people when they post one of those videos that shows you the reality on Facebook. And they're like, oh, I don't want to see that stuff. And, oh, you shouldn't be posting that stuff. And to me, it's like, why do you fear seeing where the food you're putting into your mouth comes from and how it gets there? If you fear it that much, then stop doing it.
100%, man. That's awesome. And that's exactly it. I mean, people need to collapse, and, that realization that your fork is a pitchfork, your knife is a butchering knife. What does your farm look like? And that, and that's a big part of what we're doing at Bronner's is all of our ingredients are produced from farms. We realized, just like our personal dietary choice, like we can choose to eat from a farmer who's taking care of their farm and their land without a bunch of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, and regenerating the land and planting diverse crop rotations and having biodiverse habitat for predator insects that control pests naturally, and pollinators, and doing everything right and treating their workers right and just everything right, versus like a monoculture desert of GMO corn and soy to be fed to factory farmed animals. Like that choice that we all face as people, when we eat as a company. Each company has this very similar decision on, we all, like most of our, all of our food, clothes, soap, so much stuff comes from agriculture. I mean, it's all like materials produced from agriculture. So as a company, I realized, wow, we're making that same unconscious choice everyone else is. We're just buying from brokers on price and spec. Here's our coconut oil, here's our olive oil. We have no idea who's growing it, under what kind of conditions. And like that, not lack of taking responsibility leads to this like just disaster out in the world. I mean, it's just like, it leads to this, okay, like where can we produce coconut oil the cheapest possible? And, it basically means, okay, we're going to find a country that has the most lax environmental, most lax labor laws, i.e. like for, let's say, palm oil. That's like one of our ingredients in bar soap, very controversial, and rightly so, because the palm plantations in Borneo and Indonesia, they're like just ripping up rainforests and destroying orangutan habitat and disrupting communities. But when we decided, well, there's nothing bad about palm inherently. It's just another crop, and everything can be farmed in a way that's good or bad. And unfortunately, most of the time it's bad. But when you take responsibility and you say, okay, like I want to farm in nature's image, and you look at like a wild forest, there is no synthetic chemical inputs. It's completely self-regenerating. So for a tree crop like palm, well, how do you do that? And what we realized, like we actually have partnered with a company in Ghana that works with over 1,000, and it's actually our sister company, Saranda Palm. And they partner with over 1,000 farmers that intercrop palm with cocoa, banana, and cassava. And the palm trees are high trees, and then the cassava, and the cocoa and the banana are kind of mid-level, and then the cassava is on the ground.
Right.
And what that does, like when you do it right and you get the right spacing and you understand how the canopies fill in and the right spacing and all that, you actually will replicate like a natural ecosystem has the tall trees, mid-level trees, and ground cover, and you're going to maximize photosynthetic capture. You're going to double your biomass, you double your yields. You're going to minimize weed and pest pressure of growing in a monoculture, and boost income, like double incomes for the farmer. And it's knowledge intensive agriculture, not chemical intensive. And then cocoa is another disaster crop. It's grown in West Africa, predominantly in Central America, and generally grown in a monoculture. And it just takes huge amounts of insecticide, and there's literally child slavery on a lot of farms in West Africa, and it's just really not good. But we're showing intercropping two of the most like kind of notorious crops. You can do it in a way that's completely regenerative. You're actually regenerating soil, regenerating land, regenerating rural economies, making good livelihoods for the farmers, and making really quality materials for soaps and food and everything else. So that's, each of our ingredients has a story like that. Our olive oil comes from mostly from the Palestinian side, from Palestinian farmers in the West Bank, farming regeneratively, no chemicals, all in a really beautiful way. And then the balance comes from the Israeli side, half from an Arab Christian project and half from a Jewish family farm. So we have Jewish, Muslim, Christian, olive oil, and soap.
I love that. And I also know
Yeah.
that you're involved with reducing the carbon footprint of manufacturing with your own company, while using 100% post-consumer recycled bottles for the packaging for the soap.
Yeah, so we're all we have solar panels all around and kind of maxed out our installation, and that's about half of our energy. And then the other half, we have a green credit. We buy renewable off the grid and just help build out wind and solar farms. And then then our whole manufacturing process is very ecological and very simple. When you make soap in the traditional way, it's a very simple process, no waste generated.
So where is it based? Where does this all happen?
In North County, San Diego.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, we're right by the border with Mexico, and it's beautiful here. But very much like you guys have had some major fire, 300-year fires in the last 10 years, and really feeling that impact of climate change directly. But yeah, on the bottles, we pioneered 100% post-consumer recycled. Our soaps are very concentrated, so you're going to get way more out of a bottle of our soap than pretty much 2 to 3 times more concentrated than your average quote unquote soap. And post-consumer recycled bottle. And then also our the super eco option, though, honestly, is the bar soap. I mean, our liquid soaps are bomb and beautiful, but the bar soap is definitely the most ecological when it comes down to it. We use all post-consumer recycled paper to wrap the bar soap, and it's all certified organic, fair trade, regenerative, organic, agriculture ingredients. And that, I should say, that method of farming I've been talking about, it blends, the best soil health, the best animal welfare, although no animals are involved in our production, but the standard that we're being certified to is called regenerative organic, and we're in partnership with Patagonia. And you take organic as a baseline, but then you layer on the best soil health, the best animal welfare, and the best fair labor into a single standard. So instead of having like a separate fair trade and a separate organic and a separate animal welfare, again, animal welfare not being applicable to us, but instead of having all these different certifications, you just have one. And that standard's launching right now, like this, by the end of spring, it will be in the market. It'll take a little while to ramp up, but we expect this standard to really catch fire. And I was just out there in Australia.
I was actually just going to ask you that. What were you out here for?
I'd never been, and our partners there, Lateral Food, had invited us out. And actually, originally, I was there going to go to the Byron Bay Surf Festival,
Yeah.
and enjoy that. But then actually the dates got switched. But we're like, oh, we'll just still come out and come kind of just visit a lot of different retailers and just kind of do some conferences and so like we ended up just coming to Melbourne first and met a lot of amazing retailers and toured some next level farms. And that's what I wanted to say, is that there's some really beautiful farms in Australia, really doing it right, just showing how you can, take bare and depleted soil and you bring it back to life and plant just beautiful multi-species orchards with, just incredible windbreaks of eucalypt trees. And, like the amount of carbon, and that, that's another point about regenerative organic, like the amount of carbon you can put in the soil when you farm regeneratively. So one of the big contributors to greenhouse gas is depleted soil. So when industrial agriculture comes in and saturates soil with chemical fertilizers and pesticides and rips it up, it basically destroys the life in the soil. So it just becomes dead dirt.
Yeah.
And you're just getting your crops to harvest with a crap ton of chemicals. But when you stop doing that and you start farming regeneratively, you basically bring the soil back to life. And as that soil comes back to life with compost and smart rotation crops and cover crops, and you're mulching and you're just kind of building the organic matter in that soil, that as the soil nutrient cycle starts to really start cycling again, and healthy crops and trees, and that's all an outgrowth of healthy living soil. But as that starts cycling, that the photosynthetic process of taking atmospheric carbon and making carbohydrates that becomes the roots, shoots, and leaves of plants and trees, 20 to 40% of that carbohydrate is actually exudated through the roots into the soil to feed all the microorganisms in a symbiotic relationship. And that carbon, some of that carbon stays and becomes like topsoil, humus, recalcitrant long-term carbon in the form of topsoil. So when you're farming regeneratively, you're actually taking all this carbon that got oxidized up into the atmosphere from the soil that was destroyed. By farming it regeneratively, you're bringing it back to life. It's kind of like reforestation. You're bringing that soil back to life, and all the carbon's going back into the ground. So there's two awesome things. Well, actually, there's many awesome things, but two of the most important things about this, if at global scale, we could take all this depleted farmland and rangeland and farm it regeneratively, there's huge amounts of atmospheric carbon we could put back down in the ground. So in addition to switching to renewables and away from fossil fuels, we can take a whole bunch of atmospheric carbon and sequester it in soil. And that is like one of our number one strategies, along with reforestation and doing all, other really good things. But the number one way to sequester atmospheric carbon is through regenerative agriculture at scale. And building that soil carbon, also drought-proof soil. So like you guys just had that, horrible fire, and then you had these huge rains that then, because it just like immediately took all that, like kind of burned out soil. It's all, it's obviously the fire destroyed the life in the soil, and it's just like washes right away. But when you have really high carbon, like, high organic matter in your soil, like a huge rain event like that, rather than just washing everything away, it can actually absorb all that water and hold it. So when you're farming regeneratively, it's actually drought proofing your farm, and you're able to take like a huge rain event and basically store it in the land, and rather than have it just immediately run off.
Yeah.
So that's another big benefit. So anyways, it was awesome to see just some next level farmers in Australia doing that, and it's really a worldwide movement. It's a worldwide problem. We're not going to solve climate change, just in one country. This needs to be a global movement. Yeah. So
I love you. I really do love your passion for the planet, and not just for the planet, but also for humans. You really do have got an interest in both angles. I think it's absolutely admirable.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think that's crucial. I mean, we
Yeah.
want to,
I think
you
we
know,
all
we,
we all need to take a bit of a look at what's happening and try and put out a bit of effort in, because I mean it's as they say, one person can do something, but when a whole lot of people are doing a little bit of something, things can change.
right on, man. That's 100%. And that's, yeah, as a movement catches fire, that's absolutely.
So,
And
David, where
yeah,
can people find more about you? Have you got a website that people can find out more about what you're up to?
yeah, Dr. Bronner, drbronner.com. And and just circling back on the issues of psychedelics, I just want to shout out.
Yeah.
I think it's called Mind Medicine is having a conference on November 19th, November 18th and 19th in Melbourne, and they're bringing the top researchers in the field. And I was sharing a little bit about my origin story, but today, psychedelic therapy, there's a huge renaissance where they're taking psilocybin and MDMA in particular. So psilocybin is the active component in magic mushrooms, but
Mm.
it has incredible healing potential for people who have major depression, who have end of life anxiety, just have that existential dread. It can just really help just open your heart and
Mm.
and just realize that we're part of some way bigger living process, some miracle beyond imagining, that's so beautiful and in the midst of how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Addiction, it's amazing for addiction, like just helping break really destructive cycles of behavior and thought. And yeah, and depression, those like really bad loops people get in, it's like hit and reset.
There's
Anyway, so
definitely a rumbling happening here in Australia about it. I mean, I've been seeing and reading a lot of stories myself. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, and you're a world of knowledge. I absolutely could listen to you all day. I really could.
yeah, right on. Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'll actually be back out there for that conference and actually going back to Byron. I actually had to split, talking about our lovely canine companions. My sweet Carly had to transition, so I had to
Oh,
jet back and miss my Byron leg and help her cross over, and just on a big wave of love. And
yeah.
but I'm gonna come back and check out that conference and then go back to Byron. And
Well,
I think
you're gonna absolutely love it. It's a wonderful place.
awesome, man. Yeah, no, Australia is beautiful. Can't wait to go back.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much again. Speak to you soon.
Right on. Thank you,
Bye.
man.
Bye.
Cool.
Tune in each week for Ants Talk to learn about real life stories, celebrities, and everything in between.